you have to build fences. You have to have boundaries with those things.
Yeah, because they're not tools if they use you.
Yeah, and we get so addicted to them because the human brain has not evolved far enough in the history of time to be able to resist that the endorphin hit of seeing another something come up on your feed, on your Facebook.
And so
I get sucked in too.
Do you have, of course we all do, right? Because we're human, and these things are very addictive, and they play in the senses of isolation that we might have. Hello, and welcome to the Liminal Frequencies podcast, where we dive deep into healing frequencies from our ancestors, frequencies of the earth and stars, sound, color, and light, and all of the subtle ways that we can tap into our unique vibration to awaken the highest timeline and integrate the fullest expression of our being. Now let's dive in. Welcome back to the show. Today we have a very special guest, Sebastian Eggart. Sebastian is a local of Port Townsend, Washington, and he has been in the building industry for a long time. He had his first experience building as a teenager as a volunteer to help construct a backcountry shelter on Mount Rainier. He grew up in New York in Hudson Valley and later studied architecture and managed the wood shop, beginning to become a contractor and woodworker in Port Townsend. However, on the side, he's gotten more interested in building biology and is studying building biology and how to improve the frequency and overall resonance of somebody's home and allow them to feel at peace. And this is so important right now that we understand how we can harmonize with the technology that we have and not fight it. So with that being said, today I pulled the card Context. Interpreting one piece of the puzzle in isolation leads to error. Avoid reading too much into something. Taking in the fuller picture will take time and effort, but it will bring the perspective required. A flyaway comment or aside means nothing on its own. An overreaction or misunderstanding causes unnecessary fireworks. Truer meaning comes with broader context. And when we get to that deeper meaning, that deeper understanding of life, how we can evaluate our environment, how we can exist as sensitive beings having this spiritual experience, and drop into a place where we are harmonizing instead of fighting with our environment. So here it is, my interview with Sebastian. Thank you so much for joining us on the Liminal Frequency podcast. Hi, Sebastian.
Good morning.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm really excited. We had a discussion, I believe it was a couple years ago, about EMFs, as you've been super helpful for me unraveling and exploring this topic of EMFs in my workspace and in my life and how it affects me. So for that, I'm very grateful.
Well, I was grateful for the opportunity to help. And I think one of the things that I love to do is to find out what sort of influences people have in their lives that they can either mitigate or remove so that their lives are more peaceful and they get better sleep and they have better results the next day so that they can free their spirits from all of this interference, all this electromagnetic pollution that we take in every minute of our day.
Yeah, it's amazing. So what helped you move down this rabbit hole of frequency?
It started in about 1988. I purchased a piece of property in the Port Townsend Industrial Park, or the Glen Cove area, and a friend of mine noticed that there were very high voltage power lines on one of the boundaries of the property. So being a curious lad, I asked Puget Sound Energy to come by with a Gauss meter and see what the magnetic fields were, because I had a sense that they were dangerous. That same friend had given me an article by Nancy Wertheimer and Ed Leeper about the incidence of leukemia in children whose school facilities were near high-power tension lines and electrical switching apartments, just kind of, big transformer stations, that kind of stuff. And the incidence of leukemia was unusually high in those areas. So they made that association. My friend in turn gave me the article by Ed and Nancy about these particular forms of electromagnetic radiation and the cause they might have to destroy people's health. And so when I realized that there were these dangerous magnetic fields on my property, it guided me to what I might do on that property. But magnetic fields are just part of what we look for as building biologists. And the study of building biology is trying to figure out what we have created in our living environments that is dangerous to us. And it isn't just the invisible forms of electromagnetic radiation. It's toxic chemicals, really bad building materials, it's bad access to sun and light, and to air and water, and the connection to the land and the magnetic fields that the earth offers. Because to us, the gold standard is what we find in nature unaffected. And what we're trying to do is get back to a form of life that we can enjoy, that enables us to use some of the devices that we find so convenient, but not at the expense of what gives our lives the richness and the beauty and the health that living in a true natural environment does.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're here on the peninsula in Port Ludlow, and outside there's like these beautiful cedar trees and beautiful path. You can walk down to the water, you can walk through the woods. I try and allow myself to take a little walk during my work day, and there's a nice little spot with a waterfall, and so we just really value this being in nature, and I think everybody does value being in nature, but I think the more toxins that we have, the more trauma, the more that we get diluted, and this is really interesting. I've heard from mold specialists that when people are in a moldy environment, they are often resistant to healing and resolving it in some way, because they already, part of them has been transformed and colonized by a different a different energy. And not that it's good to have the balance. We are walking petri dishes or microbes, but once you have a little bit of imbalance, then maybe it's harder to get better. So maybe this is happening for people that are in cities and they're exposed to toxic radiations and the whole soup of toxicity, and they just don't have the ability to get themselves into nature as much as maybe they should.
Yeah, that's for sure. We are very lucky to be in a place where we can access that so easily. But I think it's accessible to most people if they think about it and find intentionally move their lives and their living environment towards that end. So, if I was a city dweller, I would seek out the parks and those natural places. I would have the windows open if it was reasonable to do so. I would try to eliminate the toxins from my life, including poor food choices, the electromagnetic radiation from devices, including your phone and the Wi-Fi. Many of those same devices you can use effectively without having those sorts of transmissions that are invisible but also quite dangerous to a lot of people. You just have to learn how to do that. Building biologists will help find those ways to mitigate the influences in your life. There's a professor from New York University named Mark Crispin Miller who was suffering badly from electromagnetic radiation exposure in his apartment in Greenwich Village. And I brought him in on one of the Zoom calls that I host about this subject, and we gave him some tools to use to mitigate the influences in his environment. And he has made a great deal of progress healing from those influences. And he's been eternally grateful for that. Our goal is to try to find ways for people to sleep well, which is the very first part of good health.
Yes.
If one doesn't sleep well, your body doesn't have the melatonin cycle starting up when you close your eyes and go to sleep. And then your body doesn't really have the opportunity to heal. What we know about EMFs as an influence in the body is that they inhibit the body's ability to heal itself. Uh, if we eliminate those forces, people generally tend to sleep much better, much deeper. They go into REM sleep a lot faster and stay there a lot longer so that they can rebuild their physicality.
Even if you don't have trouble sleeping, I would imagine that melatonin would still be helpful for like balancing the EMFs. I believe I've heard something about that. The calcium channels that are caused by the EMFs.
Yeah, Jill, you're right about the calcium channels. The voltage gated calcium channels open and close in the cells, and they let toxins out and let nutrients in. But there's much research that shows that EMFs can influence the opening and closing of those voltage gated calcium channels and affect the whole body, cell at a cellular level, at a point where your body just deteriorates. And the more you have this, the more your body goes into a stress response, much like we get with mold exposure, with chemical exposure, with exposure to poor food. We know the gut and mind connection very strongly. We also know that the body communicates, the heart and the mind communicate electrically. So when you bring in things like electric fields to your body, that can also influence how your heart and your mind respond to each other's inputs. We know that grounding is an important thing. So if you think of grounding as being a way of taking excess electricity that your body has absorbed from your environment, if you shuffle your feet down the carpet in your hallway and you touch a doorknob, that snap is when you are grounding out those electrical fields from your body. You don't have to spend a lot of time on a grounding mat. You don't have to spend a lot of time with your feet in the dirt. It just only takes a second for that electricity to disperse to ground or to earth, which is a kind of a nicer way to say it.
Yeah.
That's an important thing for people because in our environment, we're surrounded by electricity. All the wiring in our houses gives off an electric field if there's voltage there ready to be used. Your body soaks this stuff up unless you're more than 8 feet away. And the way to eliminate that electricity from your body is simply to ground your body. Yeah. It's very simple, very easy, and it can bring relief to a lot of people.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you remember last time we spoke about how you knew some people that were sensitive to EMFs, but you yourself weren't sensitive. Is that still true, or do you notice? Do you feel something when you are in a big place like an airport, or is it something you just don't necessarily take on physiologically?
I think with me is I don't directly feel it. I can't walk in the room and tell you if your cell phone is on, but I know a lot of people that can. So I respect their ability, their sensitivity, their ability to perceive these things in their environment. I believe them. I've had people cry when I say, I believe you, because nobody's ever said that to them.
Yeah.
I understand your pain and your suffering, although I don't feel it myself. I know that it's true for you.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm there to help them.
And that's why you can be in a position to help them, because you're not running out of the room screaming because there's so many signals.
Some of the other practitioners of this science, they say in their little contracts, you must turn off your Wi-Fi before I come in the door.
Okay.
I mean, that kind of a thing is driven. They're getting pushback like there's a Rottweiler at the door on the inside. They open the door, boom, there's the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And they say, just turn that thing down.
Well, personally, so you helped me in my space, which is the beautiful space. It's just that the building is like a shipping container, and so there's metal. And so you said, when somebody has a device turned on, it just bounces off the walls and all the different parts of the room, and it just kind of makes a higher electric signal. And so for me, I worked on this. I turned the Wi-Fi off. I use Ethernet cable. Now, when somebody comes in, I write in the email, please either leave your phone in your car or turn it off. It's amazing how many times, I say you turn your phone off. And they don't understand the word off. It's it's on silent or whatever. And it's actually turning it off, like that's, and some people like that don't even know how to turn their phone off. It's amazing. But yeah, I've definitely like, I had to kind of protect myself a little bit, and also knowing that I'm working with the EMFs of that person's body, the natural EMFs, the harmonies, and I want to focus on that. I don't want to focus on the other EMFs that are in the room, and so to have it be working as cleanly as possible. I use some other things, the Schumann resonance and another harmonizer to harmonize things in the office, and everything's been feeling really good. But also personally, on a personal level, I don't notice it as strongly as I used to. I just went on a trip to Colombia, and every place has Wi-Fi, and with the exception of one or two places. Most places have Wi-Fi, and it never really bothered me to sleep knowing that there was Wi-Fi or anything like that. But, going through my own journey, like, there were definitely some physiological sensations. I remember one time I was sleeping in my van, which is set up to camp in, and I found out in the morning that my Bluetooth was activated, which I usually try and deactivate the Bluetooth and deactivate the Wi-Fi if I'm not using it. Like, why have that signal be running through my field all day? And I was dreaming about, like, this big field that I was in, and somebody had a TV, and they were hooking it up to Bluetooth, and it's just so strange how, like, subconsciously I knew that was going on in my dreams, and it does make my dreams pretty intense. Like, I think that's, if there's one thing that you can do listening is just see how you feel when you turn off those signals at night.
It is fascinating. I had a client who lived in a house over near Fort Worth. She called me because she had heard that I was doing this work, and she said, "God, I'm having the worst time sleeping. I have to sleep out on the porch." And this is a lady who's in her late 60s, early 70s. I said, "Out on the porch?" She said, "Yeah, it's the only place I feel good." So I went over to her house, and I walked in the door, and the first thing I saw was she had a portable phone, a DECT phone.
Oh.
And I said, this is the first problem right here. This DECT phone is transmitting from the base station 24/7 continuously with a very, very strong signal. How would you know?
Yeah.
There's no meters that she would have in her possession to be able to detect that.
Yeah.
The other thing was she had a wireless printer and her computer with the Wi-Fi, and the whole thing was in a little home office on the main floor, and their bedroom was upstairs. So we went up there and started measuring what was going on. It was a terrible loud signal. When I went through the house and out to the porch, the signals from those devices was significantly dampened by the distance. And that's why she was able to sleep comfortably out there. The other part of that was I asked her, "Where have you recently slept where you slept comfortably and deeply?" And she said, "Well, my husband and I were on a car trip back to the state of Maine. And along the way, we stopped at this little town in West Virginia called Green Bank." And I smiled and thought, I know why. Green Bank is where the giant astro telescopes are. And Wi-Fi and cell towers and cell phones are prohibited from that area. So she had no influences that night. She slept in pure radio silence.
It's where people go to vacation from EMFs.
That's right. It's where you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another customer of mine, wonderful woman, is super sensitive to all these things. The chemical in the food, and the jabs and all that stuff. The only place she can sleep deeply and comfortably is, say, up on the Dosey Wallops River or the Duck Bush or the Dungeness, somewhere in a deep valley where none of that stuff comes out. It just can't get in.
Yeah.
If your cell phone doesn't work, you're going to be fine. So
yeah.
That's
around the time that we were doing my survey for my office, I was going, I think it was during 2020, and I was going, so I think the volume got turned up on several things, maybe energetically, maybe EMFs, I'm not really sure, but it was just kind of like a pressure cooker. And so I would notice what my symptom was, like my throat would hurt, and we drive up to Hurricane Ridge, go backcountry snowboarding for the day, then come back down, and that's when I felt everything. come through, as Port Angeles, where there's a lot of cell towers and antennas, and compared to some places, it's not really that bad. But I think things have been ramping up a little bit on that. So.
Well, remember, right when COVID started, they began to roll out a whole new generation of cellular transmission facilities, which they misnomer. They call them 5G. It really isn't 5G. It's the fourth generation enhanced with some different ways of utilizing more of the bandwidth more efficiently, because more and more people are on their phones and their devices, their tablets, and now we have things like Zigbee and other kinds of home interior devices that you can start up your hot water in your bathtub from your car when you're sitting in the traffic jam. Like, we need that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an article that appeared recently on a blog written by a guy who promotes fiber optic cable rollouts. In fact, he's doing our local public utility district right now. But he posted an article about how some of the more sophisticated Wi-Fis you put in your house can work in concert with some of the devices like your stove, your refrigerator, your washer, dryer, that also have RF chips in them, to locate and measure the size of the human that's moving through the space in the house. And they use this to determine who knows what commercial opportunities. But imagine the possibilities if there was some reason for the government to track your whereabouts. Not to be a conspiracy theorist about this, but it is a fact that these things have been developed now, much like artificial intelligence. Now you can't believe anything that you see or hear on the internet because you can't verify it yourself personally.
Yeah.
So these are the sorts of things that roll out along with these technologies. The more we remove ourselves from them, the less they will influence our lives.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have whistleblowers that confirm that everything that is said in the phone is recorded, and who knows why or what that's used for, or if it's for financial gain. But
always.
That's
sure.
That's the reality.
Remember, Pfizer paid no taxes. None. They achieved profit of billions of dollars over this last 4 years, but they paid no taxes on any of it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I don't think so.
And that's why we're coming together, and I think it's important to have these conversations so that we can kind of become more sovereign in this world that we're living, and we can make the decisions and say, like, oh, we actually don't need this piece of technology, and why people are moving more into like off-grid, and people are moving off of the swaths of land that just are inundated by signals.
Yeah, I think that's a super important concept. I mean, it's easy for us here on the peninsula because we have a lot of good farmland, a lot of open space. There's a whole generation of young people that are living on the land and going back to this sort of way of life that our ancestors knew.
Mm-hmm.
They still use the internet and they use Wi-Fi and cell phones because they're a convenient tool. I have a cell phone here.
Yeah.
In fact, I should turn on a meter and then turn it off and see what the change of signal is, just as an exercise. But I like it. I look at those devices as being a useful tool in the toolbox, but you don't have to use them all the time.
Yeah.
And developing and maintaining an autonomy, you have to build fences. You have to have boundaries with those things.
Yeah, because they're not tools if they use you.
Yeah, and we get so addicted to them because the human brain has not evolved far enough in the history of time to be able to resist that the endorphin hit of seeing another something come up on your feed, on your Facebook.
So
I get sucked in too.
Do you have? Yeah, of course we all do, right? Because we're human, and these things are very addictive, and they play in the senses of isolation that we might have. Do you have any practices that you use to distance yourself from tech, to have boundaries? Like, do you have some practice?
It's just being conscious, being aware of it. If I'm going into lunch with somebody, I'll just turn off the ringer. Mm-hmm. I may turn the phone to airplane mode and I might just turn it off completely.
Mm-hmm.
I know
leave
if
it in
I
the car.
could leave it in the car. My grandson, who's 11 and a half, goes to a guitar lesson. I take him there. He feels bereft if his phone is left in the car. It's, where's my phone? Where's my phone?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like, I don't know, like he's lost his mother and he's in the supermarket.
Right.
I mean, it's really, there's this separation anxiety that's developed.
Mm-hmm.
In his lesson yesterday, I insisted that I get his phone from him. And he said, why? Well, you're at a guitar lesson. You don't need your phone. You don't need to look at it. Mm-hmm. Nobody should be calling you, and if they are, you shouldn't answer. It's respectful to your teacher if you give him your attention. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
Let's put the phone on the music stand over there where you can see it. You know it's there.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't need it. I asked him, do you still suck your thumb? No, you don't. You don't need the phone any more than you need to suck your thumb. So you take charge over your influence over that device. And then you are controlling the device instead of the device controlling you. Yeah. Same goes with your computers and your Wi-Fi, and you've got a talking car now.
Yeah.
Your car is telling you where to go and what to do and when to turn left.
Have you heard of the author Cal Newport?
I don't know Cal Newport.
He's an author. I think he's probably in the Silicon Valley sort of. He owns no social media. Amazing, of course. One of his books is called Deep Work, just about getting focused and being productive in the tech world. The other book I don't remember the name of right now, but that book is about the addiction that we have to tech and how to kind of work with that. And, there were some crazy statistics about, kids having 10 hours of screen time, the Generation I. So, and I wonder where they get it from too. It's like, this is a habit that comes from, the top down. And he was also, one of the suggestions was, as much as possible, making your phone into a dumb phone. And so these red notifications that they mess with our dopamine. Yeah. What we can do is take the phone. It has screen filter settings. You can make it so it's just completely black and white. And you won't be like focusing intently on the colors. And another thing for nighttime is you can make the screen into red. Yeah. So I've been using that one because during the day, or early hours of the morning, I'll turn it into a red light, the blue light blocker, so that it's not overly taxing of my my melatonin. Yeah. Having these boundaries is important. I mean, some people do like an hour before bed, an hour in the morning. They leave their phone. Yeah. If you're kind of just, naturally you're into walking your dog, you're into going out for walks, like that's part of your life anyways, taking a day and not going on social media. I've had several kind of like practices where I by Saturday, I'm not going to look at any of this. And I use a lot of it for my business. And so I'm deleting the apps that I don't need for that day or several days and not using it. More importantly, just the thing is, when we focus on taking something away, it creates strife and anxiety. But when you focus on like adding something in, that's where the sustenance of that is. Like, let's focus on connecting more. Like, let's, your son, your grandson? Grandson, yeah. He can, like, focus on bringing him somewhere where he can connect with people and he can play music, and he's not going to want to be on his phone, But when you're growing up and you're kind of, you do feel this sense of isolation, and that's something that, that's like the context of this, the deeper lesson of the EMFs and why we have an issue with it, why we have addiction to our phone is because we're lacking the connection that we want to connect with others. And we want to be at festivals and retreats and workshops, connecting with people one-on-one and playing music together and singing together and farming together. And
that's the wholesomeness of life right there. And we wouldn't need the phones if we had more of that stuff. Well, we might still need them, but we wouldn't be so addicted to them, so dependent on them to satisfy a part of our life, which is currently lacking with so many people. Now, we tend to freak when the kids are using them. I have had that response myself. But I remember being stuck in front of the TV set as a little kid and just sitting there watching cartoons. It's way worse than that now, though, because there's such an advertising benefit. Benefit to advertisers and the financial aspects of what they can do with our information and exploiting us for our ways that we visit other places on the internet. And that's another thing we have to be careful of is how are we being guided? I don't think there's anybody listening to this podcast that hasn't been surprised that something that they searched on shows up later on their Facebook feed as an advertisement for whatever that was. I see it all the time. People are shocked. And I say, what are you shocked about? This is all about the information age. They've got you in their sights. And it's too late. Unless you get rid of your phone, and you disconnect, and you unplug, and you go out to the land. And, not to be the Unabomber and disappear, but I think it's really important for us all to just take command of the media that we're consuming, because we are consuming that like a fire consumes wood.
And it's like when you consume food, you become the food. When you consume news or social media, it gets integrated into your cells and into your body in a way that you're going to have to purge those images from your mind, the violent programs and things that are, like social media maybe have things that they're not super positive, body image wise, or creating like a highlight reel of like all of your friends, just creating this sense of isolation that doesn't really need to be there.
And jealousy and envy and inadequacy all come into play, much like when I was a kid, there were teen magazines, and the women in high school looked at these models and thought, why don't I look like that? And for the rest of their lives, they're troubled by a feeling of inadequacy or insufficiency, or because they didn't look like those models. Same with guys. Or were we the muscular guy at the beach? No, so many of us were not. So we were raised with this feeling that we can never really live up to what the ideal is. So what the heck is the ideal? And so as we mature and grow and earn hopefully a little bit of wisdom, we realize that those things are so unimportant. And what we see now with all this media attention, we see the same fascination that we had before, but very few controls over it. So my heart goes out to the kids today growing up, trying to find a way through all of this and navigate through these social influences.
I think that they need is more leadership.
They need more leadership from their parents, too. The parents have shirked their responsibility to observe and influence, and above all, to demonstrate through their own behavior what's appropriate and what's not. I knocked my grandson's ball cap off his head when he didn't take it off going to a restaurant. I said, it's impolite to walk into a restaurant with a hat on. Don't you know that? Nobody taught him that.
Yeah.
But everybody does anyway, because nobody's taught them that that is considered rude. Now, is it really rude anymore? Well, no, because everybody does it. But we get that degradation of politeness in society. And that, to me, we're losing some of the gentleness of a society from years ago. And not to be, ageist about any of these things, but there are certain norms of behavior that I see as a 71-year-old guy that would be well to educate upcoming generations about, so that we can all live in harmony and respect with each other.
Yeah. I went to an event this week in Port Townsend. There's a big band, and everybody's dancing. Everybody's doing partner dancing.
Wonderful.
And it's almost like, I hope it's not a lost art, but it's almost an art that people used to know, all the different dances and how to do them. And it's almost like telling stories by the fire. And I haven't been to a bar in a long time like this, but I was down in Santa Cruz, and I can't remember one person sitting at this bar that wasn't on their phone.
Yeah, that's it. People are sitting opposite sides of the table doing texting. They're not there. They're elsewhere. They're in their phone. They're sucked down that electronic highway into some other place and some other time. For me, it may be an important thing for a schedule to respond to somebody, but then I put that thing down. I always put my phone face down on the table.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want it to look at me. I don't want to look at it. It's not important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just focusing on the presence is definitely an art that we need to cultivate again.
Mm-hmm.
So important to put the phone down. And isn't that such a measure of our time and attention and love that we can be present in the moment with somebody without looking at our cell phone? Well, that concludes our interview, part 1 with Sebastian. And I'm really excited for our next episode because we're going to go a little bit deeper into the EMFs specifically and how they can be mitigated, as well as breaking out an EMF meter here in my office, which was really interesting. And I really felt that we went an interesting direction in this interview, and we connected with how not only the EMFs create a frequency that we resonate with as opposed to our physical body sensations, but in general, this technology creates these frequencies that we resonate with as opposed to resonating with our own intuition, our own heart. So I want you to take a minute to drop into your body, if you have the time and space, into your breath, into the ocean and the waves that move through you. Knowing that your body is also connected at the roots in the feet, either the grounding cord or the bottoms of the feet, with an infinite sea of mycelium, a connection to other life forms, other beings, a connection to the earth energy. And just see how it feels if you can tap into that inner Wi-Fi that connects you to the roots of the earth, to the energies within. And feel that offering you what you need, the minerals that you need from the earth, the grounding. And there really is a true frequency that is called the Schumann resonance that we can tap into by connecting with the earth frequencies. But sometimes we need to steer ourselves away from the distraction of the other frequencies that can be kind of harmful to really tap into the deeper ones. So as you go through your day, through your life, may you tap into the frequencies that are most beneficial for you, for allowing your heart to be in total resonance with your environment. And may you find a resilience and strength against those other frequencies that can be disruptive. Take good care of yourself. I will see you next week.